Hey everybody, so excuse the change in location for this video. I've had a headache all day long and all I wanted was a desk to be able to sit in front of for this video, so we're in the loft. If you were here for the books as a background anyways, that's on you. That's on you. I'm just saying. Oh, I'm not like a literature student or anything like that. I am just a girl who likes to read a lot and who has annotated a lot over the past few years, and I think I have some things to share for you. So if you want to be one of those studious appearing, potentially, people that have sticky tabs throughout their books, or that maybe just wants to be able to absorb the book better, because that is definitely part of the process in annotating, at least for me it is, then this video is for you. Stay tuned. I've wanted to do an updated one of these for so long because my original video that I did on this was years ago, and I have since learned so much about different styles, about how to find your own style, and about how to make annotating work for you. So we're doing an updated how to annotate, and I have 5 different ways to show you today, 5 different types that you can try out yourself. There's even going to be tidbits thrown in there for people that don't want to damage their books at all, for people that want to keep them in pristine condition, that don't want their annotation to affect the original condition of their books, that maybe actually just can't annotate their books because they're being rented from libraries or from schools or whatever it might be. There is going to be tidbits throughout, but also the last step that I will talk about today will be how to completely annotate without damaging or affecting your book. So that is for all my people that just cannot stand to write or hurt or in any way change their books. I getcha. I've got a style for you. Like I said, there's gonna be 5 different ways that I'm gonna show you on how to annotate, on how to make annotating work for you. And I am gonna be going from like the easiest style to the most intricate style. And I actually do have examples of most of them, which are the books in the background, to kind of give you an idea. And let's just dive in. And I swear we'll get right back to the annotation talk, but really fast, I want to have a word from our sponsor for this video, which is HelloFresh. I'm so excited to be working with HelloFresh again, especially because it's the new year, and I know that I personally at least made myself a goal to start having a more well-rounded meals and just giving myself the nutrition I should have through my food, which can be really hard when you hate grocery shopping as much as I do and find it impossible to decide on what to include in meals to fulfill your goals to begin with, which is why HelloFresh works so well for me. Plus, knowing that these ingredients are as fresh as they can possibly get because they travel from the farm to my door in less than 7 days is just the cherry on top. Each meal actually comes with really easy to follow recipe cards and pre-proportioned ingredients, and these recipe cards actually even have pictures on them for all my fellow visual learners out there, and it can really take the stress out of meal planning and prepping, even when it's something more in depth like the pesto panko chicken that I'm making today. I don't know why, but chicken always holds an intimidation factor for me. I don't know, I guess I do know why. I'm always worried I'm going to undercook it, but knowing that the recipe cards have everything written out for me so that I know that it is not only perfectly cooked, but also delicious is such a stress reliever for me. Let's just take a moment to stare at these potatoes, because I love potatoes, so we're just going to take just a quick moment. Wow. I loved that for us, but, you know, back to the topic at hand. They also now have 40 weekly recipes to choose from, which ensures that you can get out of the same old recipe rut that you may be in. I know I was. And with so many options, you'll be sure to find meals that fit all of your personal goals, whether it's adding more veggies into your diet like me, or finding health conscientious meals. And for my fellow picky eaters, you can even swap out ingredients and proteins to fit your taste better, which is especially helpful for all of my vegetarians out there who maybe can't eat proteins. So if you want to feel like a chef, or you just want to take the stress out of meal planning, go to hellofresh.com and use code Bibliophile65 for 65% off plus free shipping. Thank you so much, HelloFresh. Look how good this looks. And let's see if Adam likes it as much as I think he will. Yeah. Yeah. So the first way that I want to show you is actually just tabs. There's this style, and then there's these, which I used for forever, like just the rainbow tabs. I'll link everything down below in case you do want to find it for yourself, but that's besides the point. Sticky tabs, I prefer the ones that are plasticky and that are transparent. That is just my style. There are definitely paper tabs out there for people that would want to be able to write on them, things like that. I think these are the most durable. I think they look the cleanest and I like them the most. I really did like the arrow pointing ones because I think that you can like directly, you know, point it towards a passage and things like that, but the square ones work as well. You can put in any colored tabs in your books, knowing that that is just a section that you want to return to in the novel. Now, the other hand of it is that each tab can mean something specific. I, for the longest time, had a very specific way of annotating, and each tab meant a specific thing in a book. I'll give you an example. Pink was captions that I loved, or very lovey-dovey scenes. There was tabs for foreshadowing, tabs for a plot twist. They had a purpose in the book, so this, I believe, is maybe the easiest way to annotate without damaging your books, is to have a set list of what each tab means. Now, like I said, I do actually have an example of this. This is Throne of Glass, one of the first books that I ever annotated. I never wrote in what each tab meant. I just kind of used them and hoped that I would remember it. That is not, it's not what you should do. If you don't like writing in your books, then you can still create like a glossary for your tabs, like put all of the colored tabs that you're going to use, and then using like a Sharpie pen, because they dry down really quick, you can write over the tab what each tab will mean for the book. And this has a lot of variability. You can either have every single tab in use every single time that you annotate, or if you are more willing to like have variability in what each tab means, then you can specifically pick ones that fit more of the aesthetic vibe of the book, if that's something that you like. I think that's what these kinds of tabs are better for, since they are all in one color, all in one sort of mood. But in those cases, I highly recommend creating yourself a little glossary at the start of each book, just to write down what each tab will mean. And like I said, you can write over the tabs. You don't have to be writing into the book for that. And it can just be that easy. You can just tab up a book. Step one. The second way that I've enjoyed annotating, I think this is a very carefree, easy way to annotate a book, but it does affect it. That is just to use a single pen and a single highlighter, or maybe just a single pen. I do really enjoy using colored pens depending on the book. I do like this brand. It does have some bleed through, I will warn you. They are just fabric pens, I think is what these are called, and each of them just has a different color. The thing that I like most about single pen, single highlighter is, again, the ease of it, but you can also customize it depending on what the book is. A good example for just the pen, because sometimes you don't want to go out and find a whole highlighter, you know? I actually annotated these hollow vowels in that way without any tabs. So I just underlined lines that I thought were important, and that was kind of the entire gist of it. Sometimes I would scribble into the margin just something that I thought about the scene, but that's it. It was just about writing and putting down your thoughts. What I will say is that without the tabs there, you have to go hunting for the things that you really enjoy. Tabs are good in the sense that you can find the scenes that you are looking for much easier than if you just use a pen or a highlighter. Like I said, I do like to change the colors depending on the books just to kind of fit with the aesthetic, and that is why I do like these kinds of like fabric-y pens that have different colors. That way I can choose it for each book. Good highlighters. Most people have heard of these by now, but these are the Zebra mild liners. They are dual-ended, like they have the thick highlighter-y side. I don't know if it's gonna focus. And then just like a pen-ish side. I don't really use the other side for anything in books, at least. These come in a ton of colors. You can get a pack of them, and then you can just kind of fit your pen and your highlighter for the aesthetic of the book, and that can be that. It is definitely the easiest to carry around and the quickest to do in a moment, because as the styles get more intricate, the longer it can take to finish a book. In general, I think annotating will always lengthen the amount of time that you take to read a book, just because it has so many extra steps. But the good part about that is, at least for me, it's always helped me remember books a lot better. It makes you think and expand upon thoughts that you have in the books, and it's very personal. It's very personal, but we'll get more into that as things get more intricate. The other one that I have as an example for highlighting and pen is Six of Crows. Now, what I do like about using a highlighter in tandem with a pen is that if anything sticks out a little bit extra, a little bit more. Either it's a quote that you know you're going to want to remember because that is a beautiful quote, or because it is a scene that is that intense. Then you can use a highlighter, and when you're flipping through the book, it's much easier to find those specific lines. So that is why I kind of recommend doing it more with a highlighter. Obviously, you can just have like a regular yellow highlighter for anything. You don't always have to get aesthetic with it. Honestly, I've really enjoyed using Sharpie pens lately to annotate just because they dry really quickly. They're not going to bleed onto the opposite page, and they're easy to use, especially with the clicking. Having to uncap a pen every single time is a little bit tedious, but I will say that when you use like coinciding colors, it just kind of, I don't know, it's a vibe. That's all I'm gonna say on that. When I started experimenting with pen only annotation, I started experimenting with the way that I would underline things. Back in the day, I only underlined and then I added a tab. That was the only thing I would really do in a book. Sometimes I would draw, but that's very minimal. What I started doing is actually making it a more visual annotation. This will be probably a good example of it, but there is underlining, but there's also bracketing. I'll do dashes as well. This is actually just more of a visual style of annotation. I want to emphasize different parts of the text within a story sometimes, and I don't want it all to be underlined because then it'll kind of bleed together. And then other times I will actually block things in as if I were about to highlight it, but instead I just do it with a pen. Again, it's a way to emphasize different text, like right here. I do write notes to myself in this kind of style. When you write into the margins, it can be questions that you have towards the text, like, is this going to make sense later on? But it can also be things that you tie together, like whether it is within a book series, like you're like, oh, this scene reminds me of this scene, or if it's different books, or if it's something that's very personal to your own life, that is also something that I will write into the margins, where I'll highlight certain parts and then I'll actually like write notes to myself and how that line affected me and why it affected me. That kind of idea behind it. It is more of a way to make books that you love more personal to yourself. Like, trying to understand why you love certain books is really hard, at least for me it is. So when I have these moments when I'm reading books that I love and I write notes as to why this scene affected me, it will help me kind of understand my own reading tastes better. And even if you're not a good drawer, because trust me, I've done some bad drawings in books, I do like to still add in doodles. I think that it adds something to the text and it is a good reminder for me. I like visual aids. I'm really good with visual aids. I can picture a story in my head, no doubt, but when I have a visual aid to tie it to, it's always easier to see. Yeah, that is just pen and highlighting. Annotation style number 3 is actually the way that I originally used to annotate, and that is using a combination of tabs and the colors that each tab are. So I would have a pink pen, an orange pen, a yellow pen, a green pen, and so on and so forth, so that anything that I am annotating within the book is matching up with the tab that I need to use. So the first time that I ever did this was actually Heir of Fire. I know, we're talking a lot about Sarah J. Maas, but these are some of my favorite books, which makes sense why they were the first ones to really get annotations. Oh, that's a side note. That doesn't necessarily have to be the only time that you annotate is if you truly love a book, because how are you supposed to know when you're first reading a book if you're truly going to love it? But I will say that I tend to only annotate books that I really, really love, because they're the ones that I want to spend the most time with and like get acquainted with the most. And sometimes the easiest way to learn how to annotate for yourself is actually in a reread. So when you're going through a book for the first time ever, first of all, you don't know if you're gonna love it, and second of all, you don't know what scenes are important to you yet, so you might just like go ham and underline everything, which everyone has done that at one point or another, but it ends up being meaningless to you in the end. So just general tip is to do it with a book that you already love, one that you know that you're going to enjoy the reading experience with, and one that you can mostly remember what's going to happen. That way, when you're annotating, you get a hang of how to annotate for maybe in the future when you're reading a book for the first time. So just in general. But anyways, like I was saying, this style is both intricate and easy. Now, the frustrating part with this style is that you have to carry around a lot of stuff. You're carrying not only the tabs, but the 7 different pens that go with the tabs, which that is the main reason why I stopped annotating in this way. But I will say it is so easy to go back to the books that I annotated in this way and know exactly how to find the things that I'm looking for without needing a glossary. Now, the first time I ever did this, I still made myself a glossary, which is a good example for what it might look like for you. So here we go. Basically, I didn't do it with the pens. I still wasn't that intricate at this point. But typically I'll actually write it in with each pen to the coinciding color, and this is what the tabs mean. I wrote myself a glossary until probably 3 books. 3 books in, at that point I knew my annotation style and I no longer needed a glossary. But make use of it, because what's the worst that can happen is you have an idea of how you use the tabs in every single book. Now, this style is fun in some ways because since each pen color also means something, you don't always have to tab it. Let's see if I have things like this. This one didn't have pen colors in it yet. I'll be right back. No, not that one either. I guess there's a secret like 6th way to annotate, which is having meanings for your tabs, but still just using 1 pen color. But that blends in. We're building on steps, you know? But I know I did it with Crescent City. So this scene, I annotated with a dark purple sticky note. But as you can see throughout it, there's also orange underlines, which means that I just found those scenes funny. That is like the one good thing with this style, is that you can have multiple colors going on in a page and still know what the idea behind the annotation was supposed to be without any sort of writing. Actually, this is probably one of the more minimal margin writings in all of these different kinds, besides just tabs. Because since each pen has its own meaning, you don't always need to extrapolate on why it is you underlined a certain passage. So there's a give and a take with this. You carry around a lot of materials, it's pretty intricate, and it takes a while. I did used to actually use like this side to underline everything. That way everything was very neat and precise. Now, I will say when I was going on my annotation journey this last year, where I did just do pens, where I did just do highlighting, that was when I started getting a lot more lenient with how neat everything looked, because I remembered that annotating isn't for other people looking at my books, it's for me. It's for my rereads of books or findings of certain passages. So that is also when I got a little bit less neat with it and just started kind of underlining as I will. It can get annoying, you know, like you might accidentally like bump into the letters and it might be wiggly, but it is faster. And sometimes you don't want to spend a million years annotating the book that is already very long. So that's kind of a personal preference at that point, whether you end up wanting it to be neat or not. I will say that if you are hesitant at all to annotate your books because you don't like marking up your books, it is easier to do it if you're going to be neat in the beginning. Just because when it's messy, that's when it hurts a little bit more. You're like, oh no, I got into the lines and all that stuff. But when it's nice and neat, you're like, ah, look at that. This is adding to the story. Or maybe that's just me, I don't know. Now, number 4, which has to be currently my favorite way to annotate and probably the most fun way for me so far, because like I said, annotating shouldn't just be for like the studious aesthetic of it all. It should also be to add to your reading experience of it. So if this way calls to you, it calls to you. But it is actually a very aesthetic approach to annotation. Now hear me out. What I mean by that is when I'm picking up a book, I go through my little like different mood packs of stickies and I try to decide which mood fits the book the best. And that is the sticky notes that I will use, and then I go and find a pen and highlighter duo that I think will also go with the vibe of the book. Now what's fun with this is when you're using different stickies for each book, you have to use a glossary, like in every single one. That is at least what I recommend, because otherwise you're just slapping things in, which you can do, but I don't think it helps as much. The way that I figured out my glossary was by first, just because a lot of the colors look the exact same on this, I rearranged the sticky notes into color order so that the ones that look similar are right next to each other so that I know the differences between them. That's just a pro tip. But I rearranged them first and then I put them all into the book without saying what they're for. As I'm reading though, when I find a scene that I know means something and that I know I want to make a theme throughout the book, I will pick out a sticky note, put it in, and then I'll go back to the glossary and write what that sticky note will stand for. Now, for Ninth House specifically, it got pretty in-depth. This one has a murder mystery in it. I knew I wanted a tab for that. I knew I also wanted a tab for like foreshadowing or Easter eggs. Another one for beautiful words because this is like a dark academia. Another one for sad bits, lovely bits, character like development or character markers is what I actually called it in here because I knew that these were like things that made the character for the two main characters. Things for the houses, things about the scene, and character descriptions so that I could remember new characters being introduced. This is the most fun for me because, again, like I said, it takes less tools. All you need is the stickies, the pen, and the highlighter. From there, I use everything that I've used in previous models. So I have different sort of underlining techniques, different bracketing techniques to accentuate different parts and scenes that I'm annotating. This is very specific to you. Just do whatever feels right. My brackets don't necessarily mean what brackets are supposed to mean. Brackets, when you see brackets, are like what this means and how this fits into the sentence but wasn't exactly said. You know? I feel like that wasn't... I'm gonna write down what brackets are right here.
I just used way too many words, but I was on the right path. They are punctuation marks that add context to a quote, offset text within a parenthetical statement, or translate quotes in another language.
But I use them just to differentiate parts in a scene. A lot of times I'll do it with dialogue if there's a really cool like back and forth between two characters, like a good banter. I'll bracket one character's, underline the other ones, and then just keep doing it that way to know the difference between the dialogue. This style also requires a lot more writing in because sometimes if you're underlining it, it doesn't automatically pop out why it is you underline it. So I will write in what it is about that I specifically thought was underlinable. Not everything that is underlined is tabbed. Overall, not everything underlined is tabbed. Tabs I will use more sparingly than I ever use my pens, and highlighter I will use the most sparingly. Because again, that should just be for me at least, for things that I would want to be able to see right away when I'm flipping open a book. So I use it rarely. And this is also the style that has the most like doodling in the margins and the most back and forth conversation between myself. Because again, it's very specific to the book. Not only are there tabs specific to the book, but it just forces you to have a more in-depth look at why it is that you are annotating certain parts in the book, which I think is why it leads to more doodling, more writing in the margins, all of that good stuff. Because again, not every tab means the thing that it should always mean, and there's not a color for everything that the tabs mean. So, whew, my head is hurting, but that is, I hope, a good idea or explanation of how it is that I at least have annotated. Now for the fifth one, for the people that automatically think that writing in a book equals jail time, this is for you. Annotating can still be fun. Quite obviously, you can still just use tabs to mark out your thoughts and ideas, like I said in the very beginning, but I have found tools for you guys to use in your books that will keep them from being damaged, and I will kind of pop up pictures. The first thing that I found was highlighting tape. So there's a couple different kinds of this. There's one that comes in a roll, which I think is more convenient because that way you can be very specific about the parts that you're highlighting. You don't just have to have like a one-size-fits-all situation. But then there are just ones that, like sticky tabs, they have like a one size and then you can peel it and pop it in as a highlighter. And there you go. Now you can highlight your books. Now, if you want to be able to write into margins, or maybe you want to be able to underline things more to your taste, there are transparent sticky notes. These are really cool. You can get them in multiple colors, or you can get just the plain white transparent kind, and then you can just tape them in over the area that you want to write in your book, and then you can write on that sticky note and not have to hurt your book at all. And you can just peel that off if you ever want to, or you can keep it in the book. Where was I? Oh yeah, transparent stickies. So I don't know if there's anything else to say on that. But yes, obviously you can use the transparent stickies, use it with pen. The other kind of obvious, kind of mixed answer, if you don't want to really put any permanent damage in your books, is to use pencil. I don't like pencil because it does rub around. I mean, like when the pages close, even if your like own hand rubs over it, I just think that the pencil will inevitably at one point or another get blurred and maybe even transfer over to the other side of the page. And also I would be very careful about erasing things in books, because erasing, I have discovered, is really just like rubbing off a layer of paper in some cases. So you might end up accidentally erasing some of the text. So be careful with pencil. But another technique that you can use when it comes to to not marking up your books but still wanting to annotate is actually using the sticky tab method, but then having like a journal with you at all times that you write down your thoughts into. So you, hey. The way that I would do this, at least, is put down the sticky note, and then in the journal that I would have with me at all times, I would write down the page number and then write down whatever it is that that line meant to me, and that can be that. I did actually try this method at one point because I didn't want to mark up my books. I was very much against that whole idea for a very long time, and I did it with, I think, A Court of Wings and Ruin. It was useful in the sense that it got me thinking about the book. It made my thoughts and feelings a little bit more clear. It helped me remember the book better, but I lost the pages that I wrote on. So try not to do that. Try to just have maybe like one journal that you always use for this kind of thing, and then just carry it with you at all times and put it away into your bookshelves when you're done filling it up, you know? So you don't lose it and all the different notes that you might have made. And now to just wrap this up, ultimately, annotating is very personal. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be academic in nature. It could just be a way to help you remember books, especially if you enjoy reviewing books. But in a lot of situations, annotating does become personal, because even when you are being studious, you are putting your own life experiences into what it is that you are finding in each line in a book. And I think that that is actually what's the most fun about annotating. The times that I have left myself notes that have very little maybe to do with the story, but more to do with my experience during the story, are some of the best notes that I've ever left myself. I talked about this somewhat recently, but I found a note when I was rereading A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. But that note was really just the fact that while I was reading a scene, I could almost hear music in my head, like a backtrack to what is happening and the intensity of it building and crescendoing, and I wrote that into the notes. And when I did my reread, I didn't necessarily see that. Like, that wasn't the experience that I was having in that moment, but I remembered that that was the experience that I'd had the first time around, and I could almost hear it, and it was just really a cool thing to see. I think that annotating is my favorite when it comes to rereads, just because you do get to see all of these things that a different you has experienced. And it's absolutely boggling how different a reading experience can be with the same person, with the same book, with a few years apart. Like, it's probably the best thing about annotating. Besides helping you remember and everything, it's just a way to see how different you are and how much you've grown. And the best, most satisfying thing for all of my competitive people like me is when you do write about foreshadowing or things that you think are going to happen, and then when you do a reread and you get to see if you were right or not. That's really only useful if you're competitive, I think. But yeah, those are all the different styles. I think that all of them kind of fall into one of three categories. There's the aesthetics of it, there's the uniformity of it, or there's the practicality of it. But in all of this, it is about personalizing your own reading experience and adding more to it. So I hope that this video did help in that way of just at least getting you started. I think that the best thing that anyone can do when they're trying to figure out how to annotate, or if they want to try it out, don't go maybe full-fledged, like get every sticky note, every highlighter color, every pen color. You don't need a whole bunch of materials to be able to start annotating. I really think that the only thing you need, at least in the beginning, is just a pen. Just a pen, start underlining, and start trying, because as you go, you'll realize what things you need to add on to your reading experience. Do you need sticky tabs? Do you need a highlighter? Do you like to draw on the margins? Like, your own style is going to form itself as soon as you start trying to annotate inside of a book. My personal favorite, probably, just to start, is take a pen, take a highlighter, take some sticky tabs, and you're set. You'll automatically start realizing what it is that matters to you in books and how to expand on that in your own ways. Plus, like, the way that you start annotating, don't be too stressed about it. Annotation is, like, in a lot of ways stress-free, because once you make the commitment to actually writing in your book, or maybe buying the materials to not have to write in your book while still writing in your book, everything else kind of sorts itself out. And the way that you start is not going to be the way you finish. Like I said, for the longest time, it was really just these stickies with the color coding pens and underlining. That was the whole basis of my annotation, and it worked really well for what I needed it to be. But when reading became harder for me, and when I was in more of a slump, when I would pick up a book, I didn't want to have to put in that much effort into it, not all the time. And that was when I started just using one pen. That was all I forced myself to do. And that was fun. And then I started expanding on it by saying, well, just use one pen and then it doesn't have to be neat, just make something that stands out to you. And then you added in the highlighter, then I added in the stickies, then I made it specific stickies for specific books. And there's probably gonna be books in the future where I don't use stickies again and I'm just underlining. It doesn't have to be the same all the time. So just give it a shot. I hope this was useful to you guys. I will try and link all of the products that I talked about down below in case you did want to check them out for yourself. Let me know how it is you annotate or how it is you started annotating if you already do. And if you don't annotate, let me know what your favorite style was that I talked about today. I don't know if these have been talked about before. I actually haven't watched any how to annotate videos since my original video. So if all of this stuff is not new knowledge to you, I am so sorry about that. But if it is, let me know what it is you gained. But other than that, good luck. I wish you the best in annotation journeys. Mark up your books, make them yours. I will say that's also why it's easier to start with books you love, because if you know you're not going to give them up, then it's easier to mark them up. At least that was the case for me. If I don't know I'm going to like it, marking up a book is really hard. And actually, I do have a tip for that really fast. I'm sorry, I know I already said goodbye. If you don't know if you're gonna like a book and you're nervous about marking it up, I actually read the ebook version and I use the highlighting tools that they have inside of the book, and then if I end up loving it, I will copy those into a physical copy. There you go. My headache is slightly worse, but I think it's just because I'm staring directly into this bright light, but I mean, who cares, right? Now I know how to annotate. Oh, Apollo likes my pens, so all of those that just fell on the floor, he's probably about to go ham. He steals my pens. He's a pen dragon. Also, side note, that if you like the idea of colored pens, but you like clicky gel pens, they have like tons of colors now in Sharpie pens. They're pretty cool. And last, most pens will bleed through. I think the only ones that don't are like ballpoint pens that aren't gel pens. So, and even those, you have to like, the pressure still makes a mark, you know? Annotation, right? So much fun. Ow.